Hey everyone, welcome to MT Guitar. Today we're going to cover 5 keys to understanding any song. And I think this is going to be especially a powerful lesson for those who play guitar in a pop rock, blues, folk, singer-songwriter, jam band genre. The reason I'm leaving out classical and jazz is because I think that as somebody who has a doctorate in music, I can attest to the fact that classical and jazz does a really good job of teaching music theory. And for the other genres, more popular styles, I don't think music theory is emphasized enough. The reason I say that is because as somebody who has gone through the rigorous training of ear training and music theory, I can play a song pretty much after hearing it 1 or 2 times, unless it's super crazy progressive rock stuff. Now, of course, every time I say that, then a student throws a song at me and sometimes I'm struggling, so it's always a humbling thing. But I will say that I have really greatly benefited from training my ear. I was not born with perfect pitch. I have relative pitch, which is a skill that can be trained. It's a muscle that can be, grown, so to speak. So I want to help you with that. And really my job is to not just talk about it, but also find some examples. So we're going to use the Beatles as our teacher today. And I'm going to, at the end of the video, play through a bunch of these Beatles songs. But we need to work our way to it. So I hope you stick around to the end, because at the end we're going to kind of crack the code in terms of how can we look at the key of a song, its parallel minor or major, and understand how any song can be sort of understood in terms of Roman numerals. So let me play all the Beatles songs that I'm going to sort of unravel the theory behind later in the video. But I just want to play you sections where there's chords that are not in the key. All right, so it's like, how would you figure this stuff out? So the first one is, next one is, next one is, all right, next one is, and then the final one would be, okay. So all those songs have chords that are not in the key of the song. So how do we figure those out? That's what we're going to unravel. So let's go ahead and jump in on the first key to understanding any song. It's understanding the major scale. And before you shut off your brain and say, you know what, I know the major scale, let me rework the definition from its popular meaning. A major scale is synonymous with a major key. So if I play a major scale in G, it's nice to think of this as a scale in a certain position with certain frets, but really the position and the frets have nothing to do with the key necessarily. It has something to do with it because I just played it, but really the key is a collection of notes, just as a scale is. So a key of G, for instance, G major, would have G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. All right, now from all those 7 notes, we have our key signature of G major, and there's only 1 sharp. All right, so basics of music theory are important, even if you feel like you know it. That being said, we want to know where the whole steps and half steps are. So if this is review, stick with me because I think there'll be some new stuff for you later. All right, now besides the letters, we want to understand how the key works numerically. All right, so there's 7 notes, 7 letters. We're going to ditch the letters for now, even though they're important. And we're just going to say 1 through 7. And then when we get to G again, it'll be 8 or 1. The reason we say 8 is sometimes we like to count down from 8 to 6, for instance. But anyway, 1 through 7. And we're going to find out where the whole steps and half steps are. In any key, there's going to be 2 areas where there's a half step. In major, it's 3 to 4 and 7 to 1. So let's verify that. 1 to 2, whole step. 2 to 3, whole step. 3 to 4, there's our half step, 1 fret. Okay. 4 to 5, whole step. 5 to 6, whole step. 6 to 7, whole step, and then 7 to 1, half step. So that's great. We now know the major scale, and I could and the major key, and I could do that on a single string. Whole step, 3 to 4, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, 7 to 1, half step. So at any string on any note, I could create a major scale just with that basic information. But it's probably more useful to have it in one position. All right, the second key to understanding how a song works is understanding how chords work in their most basic structure, okay? So that we can understand when a chord is made, how it's relating to the key of the song. So if we look at a G, key of G, and a G chord as the one chord of the key, we need to understand that the notes of a G chord are G, B, and D. Those notes are in the key of G major. And if we look at it numerically, it would be the 1, 3, and 5. All right, so 1, 3, 5, just like how in this key is a collection of notes. 1, 3, 5. So the G major chord has these notes that are in the major scale or in the major key in the chord. That's going to be really useful when you go through chord progressions of a song and you notice there's a different chord. And can we pick out those notes and letters of that key? All right, so the third key is understanding how a chord can be fleshed out in a key naturally or diatonically, meaning with no alterations to the key. So G through F sharp, right? All these notes and then G again. That's all we have. We're not going to make any alterations. We're not going to flatten any notes or anything like that. We can find that the 1, 4, 5 chords are major. Meaning if I go from the 1, here's the 1 of G, and I go 1, 3, 5, I have a G major. If I go to the 4, there's C, and I do a 1, 3, 5 of that, 1, 3, 5, I would naturally have a C major without any alterations. If I go to the 5, that's D. I go from there, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, in the key of G major, that's the key. Now I have a D major chord, all right? D, F sharp, A. So G, C, and D are our major chords. If we do the same thing on the 2, 3, and 6, we'll find that they're minor, right? So here's our 2, that's A. And this will work for any key, by the way, any note. So here's the second note of the key, which is A. 1, 3, 5. The 3 is flatted or minor. It's a minor third or a flat third from that 1. And so now I'd have an A minor chord. Same thing with the 3. 1 flat 3, 5, that's a B minor. And same thing with E. There's our 6. 1, 3, 5. And our E minor, natural minor. The 7 is half diminished. And so we really don't use that a lot. Most people go flat 7, which we're going to talk about. Okay? So 1, 4, 5 is major, 2, 3, 6 is minor. Immediately we can see that put to use through Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, the first song I learned. 4 chord, 5 chord, 2 chord, 1 chord. So you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain. So I'm never leaving the key of G, all right? I'm always playing chords and melodies in the key of G. I can play that song now in all 12 keys, no problem, because I know it's a 4, 5, 2, 1. Then 5, 4, 2, 1. So key of D. So you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain. Doesn't matter, right? Music is all relative in all 12 keys. All right, so the fourth key is where we get into a little bit more of an ear training approach. And ear training is something that is a muscle, right? And they say muscles, physical muscles, can take up to 6 weeks to grow. But in terms of sort of growing your ear training muscles, it's more of a neurological muscle, if you will. So maybe even longer than 6 weeks. I don't know. But I know that I've taken ear training classes where things don't sink in sometimes for over a year, right? In terms of, oh, I see now. I can hear that interval. So give it time. But the fourth key is going to be that if you know the tonic, okay, the tonic is a fancy word for the 1, all right? So here's the 1 of G. You should be able to hear all 7 notes from that 1, from that root, okay? So can you hear the 5th? 1, 5. If you can, then you can start to pick out chord progressions. Okay, the first two chords of You Got to Hide Your Love Away. 1, 5. Okay. You should be able to hear the 4. 1, 4, 1. So you want to practice this week going back and forth from 1, 5, 1 to 1, 4, 1. Then pick a different key. Let's do E. That's 1, 5, 1, 1, 4, 1. Let's do C major, and I want to go back and forth now between the 1 to the 6. You want to be able to hear the 6. Hallelujah. Right? George Harrison, My Sweet Lord. Okay? So, there's more to be heard besides the 4, 5, and 6, but those are going to be your best starting places. From there, if you can really hear the 4, 5, and 6, you're ready to move on to hearing the 2, the 7, the flat 3, etc., flat 7. But those would be a little more advanced. All right, the fifth one is where, this is where there's a lapse in understanding. So I want to thank you if you're still watching. And basically, I'm going to hope to try to unravel a mystery about chord progressions in songs, because a lot of times there will be a chord that's not within this scale. And what do, right? For instance, F major happens all the time. Okay? There's no F major. There's no F note in here. There's an F sharp. So what we need to do is we need to understand minor, and we'll talk about borrowed chords a little bit. All right? So if I play minor, I've now got 3 new notes. I've got a flat 3, I've got a flat 6, and a flat 7. And all those notes can be root notes of a chord in a major key. So that would be called borrowed chords, modal mixture, parallel minor, etc. All right, those are different ways of describing the same thing, basically. So on the song You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, if we're in the key of G, all right, let me play a little chord melody of it. We have a F major, and we know that in the key of G major there's an F sharp. So F is a flat 7 chord, all right, and it would be incorrect to say that just because there's a flat 7 chord in Mixolydian, which is a major scale with a flat 7, because we have a D major chord, and the D major has an F sharp, which is a natural 7 in the key of G. And we're not quickly going to Mixolydian and back necessarily, we're just borrowing from minor. So in the minor key, the flat 7 in the G minor key would be an F major. So John Lennon is quickly borrowing the flat 7 chord from G minor, and it's still in the key of G major. All right, so you might put an asterisk next to the flat 7 just to show, hey, we're playing a non-diatonic chord, meaning a chord that's not in the key of G major, but it sounds great. All right, so that would be a flat 7. Flat 3, Magical Mystery Tour. Just beautiful stuff, right? So E major is the key. The second chord, though, is G major, and G is not in the key of E major. E major has G sharp, right? E, F sharp, G sharp. There's no G. So in the key of E minor, we definitely have G. Okay, it's the flat 3. And in the key of E minor, a flat 3 Roman numeral would naturally result in a G major diatonically. So we're going to borrow that chord, one chord, flat 3, back to 4, back to E major. All right? Also Old Man from Neil Young. So D major to F major is a flat 3, flat 7, which we covered, back to 4. So Neil Young is borrowing from the D minor, right, for both the F major and C major chords in the key of D major. All right, minor 4, really cool stuff in my life, right? In my life, I love you more. So John A. And in the key of A, we have a D major. It's our 4 chord. But in the key of A minor, the 4 would actually be a minor. So he's going from 4 major to 4 minor to 1. So he's borrowing from the minor key just for a brief moment. All right, for a brief moment. All right, now flat 6 chord shows up at the end of With a Little Help from My Friends. A little help from my friends. So C major and D major are not in the key of E major, but they are in the key of E minor. All right, so flat 6, really cool chord. Lastly, here we have a major 3 chord. Now, if we look at the key of G again, say, we'll notice that the 3 chord is B minor, naturally, diatonically, but we can make it major. And so this is not a borrowed chord from G minor, because B is not even in G minor. So what is it? Well, some would say it's only a secondary dominant, and I would say that's mostly true, but it's not only true, because a lot of times we're not going to where it would be headed, which is E minor. For instance, the song Creep by Radiohead, da, 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 da. There's a major 3 chord. It goes to C major, then the C minor, minor 4 chord. So they're borrowing from the minor key here, but not here. They're just liking the sound of it. It's a leading tone to the 4. Now, a song where we do use the major 3 chord as a secondary dominant to the 6 chord would be Yesterday. So we're in G major, then Paul goes to the 7 chord, which is half diminished, right? Rarely used, but here it is. Now he goes to a major 3, and this is acting as a 5 of 6, because here's the 6 chord, it's E minor, here's the 5 of that, which is B7. So the 3 chord can be major, and it usually acts as a 5 of 6. Another song where it's not a 5 of 6, kind of like Creep, would be Sitting on the Dock of a Bay. 3 chord, B major. That D sharp is not in the key of G. And it's just a nice sound. Again, another non-diatonic chord here. Here's a 2 major with a C sharp. But there's no secondary dominant. It's just a nice sound. So by no means do you have to stick within a key. So this would be a way of understanding how any song can work. You have to understand that every chord, there's a geographical location in the key, whether it's 1 through 7 or 1 through flat 7, right? Whether it's major or minor. And once you flat any of the notes, you can't flat the 1, but you can flat 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. You can't flat the 4 or the 1, because those are the half steps. But you can flat the 2, 3, 5, 6, or 7. And then you can find any Roman numeral for any key or any song. The tricky part is knowing that major and minor are slightly interchangeable and can be borrowed from each other. All right. That being said, that's almost the whole story, but then you have a song like Radiohead Creep, where the 3 chord is neither major or minor. It's just changed from minor to major. The 3 chord is changed from minor to major. It's just a cool sound. Nothing more about it than that. But most of the time you'll get away with major and minor, understanding that those are going to be your root notes for your chords. So hopefully that sheds some light on how to understand any song. Thank you so much for watching to the end. It really helps the channel. Remember to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and tune in for my Goodbye Colorado live stream Tuesday, September 20th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. I'm also going to do a second one on Thursday, September 22nd, same time, 7 p.m. So there'll be 2. My buddy Dave will be joining me on Thursday, and tomorrow, Tuesday, I'll just be doing a solo thing, probably. All right? There'll be a study guide for this in the Patreon. Check that out. It's linked in the description below, and you can get a study guide for this lesson at the $5 a month level. Looking forward to seeing you next lesson. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.